So please welcome Jemmita to the show. Welcome, Jemmita.
Hi, Ashley. Thank you so much for having me on this beautiful show on your podcast. It means a lot to me. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
it means a lot to me, especially after diving deeply into your journey and you're coming straight from Peru, which is amazing. And you're, just to think of Peru's just this little stop in your life, right? Like people think Peru is, this destination, but you've created this as part of your life. And I can't wait for people to learn about you. And I think about who you've discovered who you are and who you came to be. And I love when you say, we came here to be, not to do. And when you say those words, it resonated with me because a lot of people think we came here to do, and I'm a mom of two daughters, and one just graduated from high school, and they're getting ready to start their journey to find out what they're going to do, right? But when you can turn it around and say, when I was reading that about you, I'm like, Paige, who are you going to be? Right?
Mm.
Like, who are you going to be? But when I see your journey and this beautiful, like shamanic nature driven. I've learned so much about the words in the apus and the mountains and how they speak and the crystals and everything about. And I'm a nature person, and so I'm listening to you while I walk this morning, and I'm looking around like I always do. But you talk about the hummingbirds and that thing, and I'm looking at the humming. And there's a hummingbird, and then I'm looking at the trees, and I'm always connecting to the trees and speaking to the trees and touching the trees. And I'm sure people wondering, like, wow, she really loves those trees. And I have my dogs, and I'm walking, and I'm, just like I'm always like that. But you raised my level of that. But and then I'm learning about your past before you really started discovering who you were, who you came here to be, and the real truth of who Jemmita is. So can you take us back to, I always say when you started uncovering your magic, or when the moment that you realize now, when you look back at your life, that, when that moment happened, I realized it was a pivot in my life, or I started to see really who I came here to be.
Mm. I love this conversation, Ashley. As you're speaking, every hair on my body is kind of standing on end with remembering, really. And for me, this who we've come to be, not what we've come to do, is really discovering what our true work really is. Because I think so many people, including myself at some point in my life, because as you were saying about your children, in the school system, and it's kind of programmed into us from such a young age that we have to know, when you're 14 or whatever, what do you want to do, or what do you want to be? And so the focus becomes, as it is from when we really arrive to this planet, all about the external, what's going on out there. And that's where we become disconnected from ourselves and forget to come back into our center and really feel into what our true purpose, our true work is. And that is what we have come to be. Sometimes, we can marry that inner work with our outer purpose. But I often say to people, that have a deep desire to be in service in some way, which so many of us do. I think at this point in the planet, there's a natural desire for people to want to help, to want to be in service in some way, but there's a tendency to think that it has to be a role that you play. You've got to be a healer or a this or a that. When your true work, your purpose, your service can come through you if you're a banker, if you're an accountant. It doesn't matter. Once you tune in to what it is you came here to be, and each one of us, I truly believe, was given a very, very innate gift before we ever arrived here. And there's a discovery of that gift as we move through life. And I think that comes, you start to discover that. I think for most people at some point in their life, there's a feeling of not being enough.
Hmm.
There's a not enoughness. And
Right.
where does that not enoughness come from? Again, it's because we're validated from the outside, right from, because our true nature is love, right? So we're always trying to orientate ourselves back to love. So we sometimes twist ourselves into a pretzel to receive that love, but we can then become disconnected from ourselves. But when we come back to that, like, what is my true purpose? If you're somebody who lights up a room when you walk in, it doesn't matter whether you're a healer or a graphic designer or whatever, you can make that your true purpose. And then eventually, over time, if you choose to, you may choose to marry your outer purpose with your inner purpose, but it's not necessary. And I think I had a real, I think I've always had some sort of sense of that because I was born on the summer solstice in the southern hemisphere. It was actually a month late to be born on the summer solstice, which I find really funny. So even as I was a little girl, I remember my mum used to always say to me, "You were born on the day of most light." And so I
Happy
had
birthday.
this, my birthday was, it
When
was, 22nd of December, which in the
Okay.
southern hemisphere is the summer solstice.
Right.
Uh, 21st of December in the northern hemisphere is, of course, the winter solstice.
That's
So,
why I was confused because you're a Sagittarius and so am I. And I'm thinking summer solstice in
yeah.
December. Okay.
Other
Got it.
hemisphere. Yeah.
Yes.
And here in the Andes, where I am at the moment and where I spend quite a bit of my time each year, they always celebrate their summer solstice on the 22nd of December, their winter solstice on the 21st of June. So it's the flipped, it's the opposite.
Got it.
So I had this sense, that that was my true nature. I was always happiest. I was an only child, so I spent a lot of time on my own, speaking to the birds, talking to blades of grass. They sort of became my best friends. I was also highly empathic, super sensitive, and I had a perception and even interactions with other beings from other dimensions when I was really tiny, and I had nobody to guide me through that. So I used to create rituals. I knew that if I did this in this way and that in that way, then that would close that doorway. This would open this. It's so crazy. And had I had a well-meaning adult seen me in this, thankfully nobody did. They probably would have taken me to a doctor and I would have been diagnosed with some kind of disorder. But for
Mhm.
me, it was just an innate understanding of how to work with and move energy. But with that sensitivity also comes a lot of difficulty. There was a lot of melancholy, a lot of, even though I was very bright and very kind of, when I was fully in my true purpose, my energy was very bright. I also had a tendency to, as most empaths do, to shut down and retreat, because we need to. But you're not taught that as well. So I think my journey, I suffered two depressions. When I say suffered, I mean, they felt like suffering at the time, but in hindsight, they were my greatest gifts because they helped me to lean in to the feeling of deep rest, and go right in and understand that the way through that was literally through, not by avoiding it. And through that, you start to touch the essence of yourself, your true nature, your true work, which for me and for all of us is the power and the strength of my light that we all are. As I said before, our true nature is divine love. And we're always trying to orientate ourselves back towards that. But when we start to remember the truth of who we really are, you start to see things through a different lens. Your perspective starts to shift and change. And this for me has really been a massive, massive part of my path. I remember right back in the beginning of my shamanic path, my prayer was and still is to this day that I'm able to hear the earth, that I'm able to speak to the mountains, and that I'm able to see beyond the ego or the outer form or the personality of somebody, anybody, and be able to see their true essence, which is their light. So yeah, it's been a path of discovery as it is for all of us. And I think one thing I feel like we're born ready, but one step prepares us for the next. And we kind of want to rush ahead and get to wherever it is we think we're going. But the trick, the joy, the magic is to really be in the journey along the way. And that shamanic path that you were talking about, where you start to be led by signs, synchronicities, and omens, that's living a life of magic. Then
Mhm.
you're in harmony with that which we really are. Really, nature is just beauty reflecting beauty, perfection reflecting perfection. We are nature, nature is us. And it has the answers to everything that we need and the guidance to every step we need to take if we start to listen.
Right.
That's it. Start to listen. And when you get a sign, say thank you. When you say thank you, more of them come. And
Yes.
it really unlocks a magical life. It's to be led by synchronicity is a magical, magical life.
Oh, I love it. Yes. And I would say, thank you, more, please. Thank you, more, please.
Yeah.
But listening to you and when you talk to the grass when you were little and um, how you had that shamanic, ingrained into your soul, like that was like it back then. If I would have said to you, looking at you at say a 7-year-old one day, you would have believed me because you felt that already, right? Like that was already like coming through you. But when you get to, I mean, you did like raw vegan and you're very entrepreneurial. You had all these, businesses and you did TV show, you were behind the camera. So I'm saying these things because it took you a while to get to your true who you were supposed to be. I mean, these all were part of who you came to be, but now to see who you are, it's just interesting to watch your journey of who it's like, and I look at my life and I'm thinking, gosh, I took that, the Y in the road there. Well, it always brings you back to the center. And then I always, oh, we're going to take that, all these choices that we take, right? And we're going to go there. Oh, it's going to bring you back. So watching your life and how it kept bringing you back. And then tell me about it was like 2012 when it began, where you met where you explained that. Because I feel like that was kind of the pinnacle where you were like, oh, I
Mm.
see who I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, I think there's sliding door moments. That's what I call them. I don't know if that movie I remember from a very long time ago with Gwyneth Paltrow. Those sliding door moments where you look back and yeah, that had you have made a different decision in that moment, the entire trajectory of your life might change. And it was actually much earlier than that for me. That really began when about 25 years ago, before I got into the shamanic realm, where I started meditating. And I was working with a modality at the time called transcendental meditation. You probably know it, or Vedic
Yes.
meditation, where you're using a mantra. And when I began that, oh my gosh, within weeks, something massive, massive, massive opened up. And this
What does
was
that
really
mean? What does that mean?
well, I'll explain to you. It was kind of the opening of my shamanic path back then. Because from a kid, I'd always, like, I used to lie there for hours in bed listening to silence. It had a sound. And I
Hmm.
used to try and explain it to people. I was like, can you hear that sound? It's like this, "Ooh," and people would be like, what? You kid? Are you crazy? But I used to listen to this sound a lot. And it wasn't until I started doing TM and I transcended that mantra that I was in the sound. And I was like, oh, this is it. So it felt quite, of course, you've got the mind and we're always having a dance with the mind. But I would come back and I would sit in that vibration as much as I could in that sound. And during that period too, I was going through massive cataclysms in my life. I mean, it was huge what was happening in my life. I had 17 years of mega intense processes, all that were preparation for the path that I walk now. But what it opened up for me, and what I was going to share with you back then, was my remembering of how to hear, sense, feel, trust, know that there was something beyond this physical reality that we are walking around and living in. Of course, I knew that, I had a sense of that, but I was very much, up until that point, I was very much, I guess, identified with my emotions, identified with who I was, identified with this world and what it was. And once that started to open, now I never called that a spiritual awakening because I just didn't know those words and I just
Hmm.
didn't. And then over the years, you hear people talking about that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess you could label it that. And I know
Right.
that a lot of people hit that point. At some point, something happens where there's a massive shift, and sometimes it can be very fast and very quick. And it can be very, very unnerving, especially if you're in a community where you don't have a lot of like-minded people. For me, I didn't. I was in the TV industry. It was very, glitz and glamour, and it was all of the things. And here I was having these major things happening at night, visitations from, as whacked out as it might sound, there was visitations from beings, there was a lot I was seeing with my eyes open, a lot that I was hearing. And I had a very, very strong memory, and this might resonate with some people, especially the women out there, that took me by surprise and shocked me and made me realize why I had shut all of that down and had so much fear around the unseen world. I saw myself burning, and
Huh.
I was hot. You know, I could feel the heat, I was sweating. And I realized if I don't pay tons of attention to past lifetimes. I absolutely believe in them, but I think that we're here and now. So it's helpful to
Right.
understand and know what's happened in past timelines or in past lives so that we can have an understanding of, oh, that's why this is playing out for me now. And we can reconcile it and heal it and move on from it. But absolutely 110%, I was like, my God, I've been burned at the stake for these gifts, you
Wow.
know, for this ability to be able to see this and feel and hear. And everyone has that ability, everyone. But to some extent, the veil has gone over and we've shut it down. So through that meditation, when that started opening up and I started getting all these flashes and rememberings, and some of them were really scary too, because, you know, once you open that Pandora's box, you're opening it to everything. So I had to learn then how to discern between heavy energy, light energy, how to work with guardians and allies to come in and help me when there were heavy energies coming. Why do heavy energies come? Because the brighter your light gets, it's like moth to a flame. So the
Right.
more you shine, and this happens also, we see it happening in social media, even in the 3D world all the time. It's not just in the spirit world. The
Right.
brighter you shine, the more people might try and take you down. You
Right.
know, especially in Australia, we have a thing called a tall poppy syndrome. It's crazy. It's like, you know, the better you get at something, the more the media, the more that everyone
Wow.
wants to chop you. I don't think it's as bad in the States, but definitely in Australia, and I think in the UK, there's a bit of that too. But you see it on social media. So all of this is practice, right? Because at the end of the day, as one of my mountains said to me once, know who you are. When you know the purity of your heart and you really get to know your center, and we can never fully know ourselves because we're always becoming, but we know ourselves as much as we can in the moment. We know our true purpose, as I was saying before. We know what we're here to share. And then when you get the criticism, or when you face up against energies that are what we call hucha or heavy energies, then you come back to knowing the strength and the purity of your light, and you kind of go into these things more like a Jedi Knight. It's
Mm.
like Luke Skywalker doesn't avoid Darth Vader, he goes in with a lightsaber. You know, it's kind of, may the force be with you. It's kind
Right.
of that sort of a metaphor. So all of this stuff, and I became really aware then that when I was going into red carpet events, for example, like the Logies, where everybody's partying and drinking, and I'm there, and I can't, at that point, I have a drink now. I don't drink a lot, but I like to have a little, you know, a red wine or something. When I was going through that, I couldn't. I had to stop because I
Mm.
was so, my frequency was so high that the alcohol would just feel so wrong in the body. You know, I couldn't, it made me feel rotten. So, but I was in this world, in this scene, and I was really aware of, you know, wow, what is this that I'm going through? Nobody else is going through this. But I wasn't afraid of being out there alone. I saw myself, and I guess I still do. And this is one of the things that I help and encourage the people that I work with to do, to be a luminous leader. That means a lighthouse. That doesn't mean preaching about, I'm this and this is how you do it and stuff. It's about becoming that lighthouse so that you naturally switch on others. And then there's worthy inquiry, like people will come to you and ask, hey, wow, you're shining, like what's going on? And then you can share with them, right? And this is
Right.
how we
I love
kind of
that.
lead by example. So this is what was happening back then. I literally had a guy one night from the other side of a nightclub. He came over to me and he's like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm standing over there and there's a light and I can see it. And what's going on? And I
Huh.
was like, well, you know, and this, people pick up on these things. You don't have to say anything sometimes, it's just through the being. So, all of these experiences, and I went through two major bankruptcies. One of them was on the front page of all of the national newspapers, because at the same time, I was seeing a very well known actor in Australia, and my last name is Gaunt. So, the headline was, she's Gaunt, she's
Oh
lost
my
her
gosh.
person. Yeah, I had investors take me for a ride, and they left me with $1.5 million of debt. I had no way of paying it. Anyway, that's a whole other story, but I did my best to make sure everyone was taken care of. And I really, and then I bounced, because people are like, at that time, people were saying to me, how are you not having a nervous breakdown? It's like relentless. And I was like, no, it was everything that happened. I'm not saying it wasn't hard. I'm not saying that I didn't have moments where I just wanted to chuck it all in and where I felt overwhelmed with the enormity of what was happening. But there was something inside me that was saying, this is happening for you to refine. You are refining a skill. You are honing a skill. You are discovering who you are. Just stay with it, stay with it. Keep coming back, keep coming back. And more and more and more. I know this might sound whacked out, but this is really how I work now, and what led me to this shamanic path is, honestly, these guardians that are with us, these mountains, this earth, these elements, these animal allies, these ascended masters, they are not going to let you fall. We are not alone. And that's the biggest thing. As soon as you realize that you are not alone, you have the strength, you've got a team, there's a community backing you. Because in those moments, for me, I didn't have a business partner. I didn't have a partner that was going through this with me. It was just me,
Wow.
right? So it's very easy for you to spin out into, oh my God, I'm alone holding this. But when you really strengthen that communion with the beings of the seen and the unseen world that aren't human, and humans as well, of course, we have our human allies as well. But the beautiful thing about these beings of the seen and unseen world is that they're unconditional.
Mm.
Right? They don't say, oh, if you give me that, I'll give you this. It's like, no, if you're there in relationship with them, they'll support you in any way that you need. And so the way that I found my way to that, to my Andean shamanic path, because I was already very much walking one without even realizing that that's what I was doing. What is shamanism? It's really that. It's walking between the worlds. It's learning how to be guided, listen to, and be led by the synchronicities of nature. It's learning how to work with energy, move energy, and understand that you are it. There's like we call it the Teximuyu in the Andean cosmovision. It's like a web of light that goes throughout the entire cosmos. And when we realize that, just like in the middle of a spider's web, like every little move, like this interview that we're doing now, is creating a vibration in that web.
Hmm.
And that is changing the entire web, right? It's going out across the planet, across the universe, across the cosmos. Just this interview that you and I are doing right here, right now, is making major change and healing and awakening of the planet. So when you start to be aware of a shamanic nature, then you start to think about and become conscious of every breath you take in. What am I taking in? Heavy energy or light energy? How am I transforming it in my body? Am I making that mine and turning it into heavy energy so that when I breathe out, that's what I'm giving out? You
Yes, I
start to
love that.
bring, yeah, it's like bringing consciousness to every moment. So that turning point for me in 2012 began with a harrowing ayahuasca journey.
Hmm.
I was in the Andes in Peru, and I sat in a space that, and it wasn't the medicine. The medicines are beautiful, they're always beautiful. But wow, I mean, the way that this space was facilitated, all I can say is that the people facilitating were way more interested in playing pretty music than they were in, which we see all the time, than they were in what was actually happening and the mess that was going on in this space. And I
You mean
had an
people
experience.
like throwing up, that kind of thing, where people were really reacting to the
Yeah, not,
medicine?
yes, not just throwing up. There was severe, major trauma happening. People screaming for help and no help being given. And this is the thing. The beauty of that ceremony was that it showed me in that moment what kind of facilitator I didn't want to be.
Mm.
And it made me instantly understand the importance of a trauma-informed safe space, and that when you're working with these beautiful sacred medicines, that you have to know what you're doing. You have to know, if somebody is out, you got to know how to bring them back. You have to know how to open the space. You have to know how to close it so that nobody is taking anything with them as they go. None of this was happening in this space. There was a lot of
Wow.
trauma being created, not just for me, but for others as well. And as a result of that, for about 6 months afterwards, I was experiencing severe depersonalization, um, to the point where I knew it was because of this experience. But again, had I have gone and sought professional help, I was on the edge of psychosis. I mean, it was,
Oh,
I couldn't,
wow.
yeah, it was mad. I couldn't even have a conversation with somebody without, not just, when you say, oh, I'm feeling out of my body and you kind of feel floaty. No, this was like out, like I'm on the roof and I'm looking at myself down here and I can't get back in.
Wow. Okay, so I've never done ayahuasca. And I've interviewed, if I've had 250 interviews, at least half of them, we talk about that. So it's always an interesting thing. Will you explain to me? Because I guess for one thing, like the fear for me to when I hear these stories is like, do I really want to put myself through who knows how I'm going to react? So, and I'm sure many people listening think that way as well. But when you explain it that way, will you be a little bit more detailed into what you mean by that? So I understand that where you're like, now I understand the importance of, being in the right place if you're going to do something like that.
Yes,
Like what was your body, what was your soul doing?
I'm more than happy to. I think it's a very, very, very important thing for us to be talking about, because the sacred medicines are and have been opening up for the last few years. I've been working and serving medicine for the last, coming up to 12 now, not long after that experience. When I started, I'll talk about that in a minute, but um, the thing is I'm not going to pass any judgment, because I do believe that with any modality, whether it's ayahuasca or anything else, the facilitator is only going to attract people that are where they're at, that are in a vibrational match at that time. And even if it's not an awesome experience, what the person is receiving is exactly what they need for them.
Got it.
So
Yes.
I'm a massive believer in that. And then what I would encourage people is to do your homework and your research and follow your intuition. If something doesn't feel 110% right, if it's not a heaven yes, it's a hell no. And, move on and wait until you feel really called, and until you find somebody that you know that your nervous system can relax with and that you feel safe with. So the way that we work with ayahuasca here now in the Andes with my Maestro Puma, and I. And the way that we work is we don't force anybody to take any more than what they're ready for. So, for example, if you turned up to a ceremony, Ashley, we would say, are you feeling any fear? And if you said yes, normal, most people do with the medicine, we would suggest to you that you just have a microdose of the medicine to connect to the spirit. And then once you feel comfortable and your nervous system is relaxed and you meet the medicine, you meet the beautiful spirit of ayahuasca, and you're feeling comfortable, then it's like you can have a little bit more. With like that old paradigm, for me, it's very old paradigm, this thing that we have to smash people open and that you've got to go, beyond what you're ready for to heal. There's so much more in the subtlety. And the medicines can we actually don't even need to drink the medicine to receive the healing benefits of the medicine. In
Hmm.
my Hampik program, the 12-month program we do with medicine women, we teach them how to work with the medicine through programming it with their breath. You can program it into water. And we have people that say they have a stronger realizations, visions, understandings from working with programming water with the essence of ayahuasca and drinking it, rather than having to actually drink the
Huh.
medicine itself. So, the old way, and what I've sort of seen in the past, particularly pre-COVID, the way that I was working with the medicine changed a lot after COVID, because the direction I got was that our nervous systems are completely different now. We're wired differently. Our psychic senses, our intuitions are already so open. We don't need much to open. But it is a beautiful medicine. So is Wachuma. They're beautiful medicines. Just remember that whoever you're taking that cup from, if someone is serving it to you, you're receiving their essence. So you want to be sure that the facilitator is somebody that you're really aligned with,
Right.
and you know, with these ceremonies, they have very specific beginning, middle, end. There's certain ways of doing things, there's certain songs. As I said, there's ways of opening, there's ways of closing. And it happens for us often that, you know, you have people and they come and sit in one ceremony or two ceremonies and they're like, oh, the medicine told me I'm meant to serve medicine. And then, you know, a month or two later, they're out there, they've
Oh,
got it somewhere online and they're doing it without any background or training. I understand that too, because like I said before, there's a deep desire, I think, for people to want to be in service now. And that's why I offer a training in serving the medicine of cacao, because that is a beautiful, safe, profound, when you work with it in a particular way, you can really reach those deep heart places of knowing, intuition, wisdom, and have amazing ceremonies working with that sweet medicine of cacao, but in a very direct way.
hmm.
So
What's the
it's a bit,
difference? What is cacao open? Is it the same idea as ayahuasca with all the other?
they're all different because they all have a unique spirit. So it's just like you and I have our different personality or our different essence. It's the same thing with the mountains. You know, they all have a different personality. It's the same thing with the sacred plants. They have a very specific essence, a very specific spirit, a healing quality. They work with you in different ways. So, you know, often we hear ayahuasca being referred to as the mother or the grandmother, like a very feminine spirit. However, we say no protocols. If it shows up to you as a masculine spirit, then that's also fine. Wachuma, which is the San Pedro cactus, we refer to him usually as the grandfather. It's a very, very different medicine. We work with it during the day. It's a solar medicine. It's a medicine of light. It's can it's a very, it can be a very, very deep and profound journey, but I'd say it's a bit gentler in terms of on your nervous system. Ayahuasca can tend to shoot you out, whereas Wachuma is very soft. You know, it's kind of like a rolling, waving sort of a medicine that puts you very, very deeply in touch with nature. And once we reconnect to, you know, to nature in that stillness, in that deep and profound way, then we reconnect to ourselves because we are nature and we find the answers to everything that we need. So with Wachuma, you're very aware in every single moment. So you're kind of integrating as you go. It's a
Hmm.
really beautiful medicine. There are so many different medicines. Peyote is like the younger cousin or brother of Wachuma. It's worked with at night. It's a much faster medicine. But essentially, you know, with all of the medicines, like with all of the sacred beings that we work with, we develop a relationship, right? So the first time you meet the medicine, it might be a bit like, who are you? Oh, who are you? Oh, well, I'm Ashley. Yeah, well, I'm, you know, it's kind of, it can be a little bit awkward and a bit
Huh.
crunchy. And then over time, as you build that relationship to the medicines, you receive so much more. And ultimately, I'll just say that at the moment, especially over the last 5,000 year cycle, and all of the experiences that the human race has curated and have gone through, there's a big need for healing now. We're in a healing cycle. So the medicines are largely popping up for that purpose, but that was never their original intent.
Hmm.
They were never meant for healing. They were meant for manifestation and creation. So when you come and you look at here in the Andes or in Bolivia and you visit a lot of these jaw-dropping archaeological sites where engineers to this day cannot figure out how they managed to harness the power of light and sound to create lasers to literally melt rock and create these amazing civilizations that just blend into the landscape seamlessly. Well, they say that they worked with the medicines different in different regions to understand, to reconnect to our original intelligence, our original wisdom, because here in the Andes, and for me personally, ever since I was little, I just know 110 million% that we're from the stars. It's so weird because you'll be
Hmm.
out, if you say that somewhere else, it would seem woo woo. But here in the Andes, they're like, yeah. You know, and it's like, there's nothing weird about it at all. They're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
how do you think we've got all of these things? Like, this is not human technology. We were taught how to do this.
Right.
So the medicines, that's what they were originally for, was to be able to go through these portals, connect with the divine intelligence, the original intelligence, our ancestors from the stars, and get information about how to create this heaven on earth. How can we be in the best harmony here on Pachamama, on earth, and create these awakened civilizations. So for now, the medicines are necessary for healing. But more and more, in the way that I like to work, is rather than going in and being like, we're going to get to the bottom of your stuff, you know, put you through a hard process, it like comes back to my true purpose, which is to anchor the light, to be as pure in the light that I can be, and hold that space. Let the light do the work, let the medicine do the work. And then that way, when people go into their heavier processes, because we all have them, it's the nature of being human, you're
Mhm.
going in like Luke Skywalker with your lightsaber. You remember who you really are, so that when you look at these things, you're able to see them through a different lens. You're able to forgive what needs to be forgiven and release yourself from that. You're able to reconcile things from the past so that you can then become the pioneer of your future, and you're not constantly, you know, rattling around in that story. So the healing can be very fast, and in a properly facilitated space, it's beautiful. Doesn't have to be hard, doesn't have to be heavy. We can heal through our highest frequency. But going through that ayahuasca journey then taught me that. It wasn't the medicine, it was the way it was facilitated. And to say also that that led me to meeting my first maestro, because no one could help me. I'm not someone who goes to see healers and stuff a lot. I think it's great. I mean, people need it, but for me, I've been always a bit more self-sourcing, but I needed to. And no one could put me back together until I met a little old elder who was about 5 feet tall from the mountains in Keros, it's called. Keros is about almost 7,000 meters above sea level. And I was doing some work with him, energetic transmissions, and he was like, what's happening with you? Because I was just like, phew, every time, you know, we'd start this thing. And he says to me, ayahuasca. And I said, see. And he says, donde? Where? And I said, Pisac. And he's like, ay, slaps his head. He's like, lie down. He lay me down, and in 20 minutes, this humble man with a mesa, like the medicine bundle that I've got back here, a bell, a rattle, and some mapacho, some black tobacco. He did this little ritual, and I saw myself running across galaxies, like sprinting, like the chariots of fire. And then I'm like running through fields, and then he gets the mapacho and goes in my crown, and I just felt myself like a brick go, like it was like a thud
Oh,
back into my body. And that was my first experience of a soul retrieval. So
okay.
what he had done is he had basically, in a very simple way, worked with his mesa, with his medicine, with his guardians, and he'd gone out searching and looking to see where I was. And when he found me, he used his song and his rattle to say, come, come, come,
Oh,
come, come,
wow.
come, come. And he called me back, called me back, called me back. And then, you know, in the head, the mapacho just grounded me in. And from that minute, done. I was like, I sat up and I was like, oh my God, oh, I'm back. It was so visceral. And then I knew. I was like, this is what I want to do. This is my path.
Oh, I bet. That's
So that's how
amazing.
it
When you
started.
say soul retrieval, so when he was explain that now that you know, understand it more to me, because I was interviewing someone yesterday about entities, and she was explaining how, and you talk about entities too, but how, like, so in that ayahuasca journey, your soul was removed from your body.
Yeah, so what happens is it's not that we lose all of ourselves, but even a tiny part is enough to make us vulnerable. So whenever we experience a trauma of any kind, and it can be something as small as falling on your bum when you're two and nobody's there to pick you up,
Mm,
all right? It can be that tiny. So it can be totally, what's the word? Like not unconscious, but like you just missed it. It
right.
wasn't anyone's fault. It just happened, right? So it can be a tiny trauma that can create just a little split, or it can be a big trauma. So if you've gone through something massive, like abuse or whatever it might be, and that isn't reconciled in the moment, and there hasn't been uh, anything that has happened in the moment to call you back, to reintegrate your parts. I'll explain that in a minute. That can cause it. Or when you go through big experiences like I did, where there was severe fear, and what had happened was, is I was given way too much medicine, way too much, about 4 times the amount of what I should
Wow.
have been, and I was shot out like a cannonball. So I had no, and I'm just tumbling through space. This is what was happening for hours and hours on end. I'm talking like 8 hours of just
Oh
tumbling
my
through
gosh.
wormholes. And so in that moment, your soul and your home star, if it's in the cosmos and it's infinite wisdom, will grab hold of that part of your soul and say, come here, come here, come here, come here. You're safe, you're safe, you're safe, right? And it will take that part of the soul and kind of look after it. But
Hmm.
then that part of the soul, if it's not returned to you, if you don't know how to call it back, or if somebody doesn't call it back for you, or you're not aware that that's happened, then that possibly, larger piece of you is hanging out somewhere out there. So it makes you very vulnerable here. This is often, if we see people, like if I have someone come to me with depression, that's very low vitality, that has a recurring illness, that has a lot of anxiety, this is the first thing I would do as a soul retrieval,
Huh.
because we need to call all of those parts back. And sometimes it has to happen multiple times. If there's been, for example, an accident, you've been in a car accident, then the piece of the soul generally will go into the earth. It goes into that Pachamama, that earth of where that accident happened, kind of for safekeeping.
Hmm.
So it's sort of like it's on one level, it's sort of like an inbuilt universal law, a mechanism that's built in to keep you safe. But if you don't call those parts back, and you're walking around and you're not all together, then you're susceptible and vulnerable. And this is when, when we talk about entities, for me, entities can only give you trouble and only attach to you if there is a vibrational match. If you're solid, strong in your highest light and in your strength and in your center, and also parts of, are aligned, entities can't attach. They can try, but they won't be able to, because there's nothing vibrational for them to stick to. Fear, heaviness, again, in those vulnerable states, those heavier energies, that's when you can get disturbances from outside
Hmm.
energies.
Wow.
Um, so that's a whole other topic, but that's what happens with soul retrieval. So when we're doing a soul retrieval, we need to, for me, if I'm doing it for somebody, I speak to the earth, the Pachamama of where that may have happened, or I speak to their home star, and I engage certain allies and crystal beings, animal beings actually, and ask them to go and look for it and retrieve it and bring it back. But there's a very, very easy way that people can do it for themselves, and I really suggest that if you have had a shock of some kind, or this is an interesting one too, even if you have, for example, say you've come on a journey here with me to Peru, and we've gone and visited an amazing sacred site, and you've had this incredible remembering there, and you don't want to come back. You don't want to leave. You want to stay there. It feels like you could sleep there and move in, and that's home. It happens for people a lot. They're like,
Yeah. Oh, wow.
they have this remembering,
Huh.
and they have so much joy, from being in these places, that they don't want to leave. In those cases, we also need to do a soul retrieval, because it can be that parts of ourselves are like, I don't want to go back to that physical 3D world. I just want to hang out here up in this
Oh,
temple.
I bet.
Yeah. So it's also in that way as well, So we're always calling those parts and pieces back.
Oh, wow. Let's talk about this new world and this new earth that we're moving into. And you've opened up my eyes because we talk about that a lot. That's a common word these days. But when you were talking also about we're all crystals, and the mountains are crystals, and everything is crystalline. But to understand that? Or is that where we're moving? Like, could you explain? Like, I look at it like 2020 was kind of that year that started this major, push into like this new 5D world, like, people talk about so much these days, and you talk about it too, but can you explain that?
Yeah. So, one of the biggest things I've learned over the years is that we don't need to so much protect from things. It's more about remembering our true nature so that we transform rather than shield. So, our everything in this universe, in this planet, everything that's material and physical here, including our physical bodies, is made up. The content, the mineral content is the same as a crystal. It's been said that we are stardust. We're made of the same material. We're vibrating in different, in different quantities of each. So we're looking different, but we are our true nature, the makeup of our being is crystal. And when you think about why we work with crystals, I've got one here in front of me, this beautiful one my
Oh,
partner gave me
beautiful.
for, yeah. When we work with crystals like this tourmaline, we are we're asking the crystal to transform heavy energy, right? So a crystal doesn't go, oh no, thank you, no, I don't want that, and I don't want that. A crystal knows itself as the crystal. It knows itself as the highest frequency of light, and so it says, bring it on. I'm not going to judge whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's heavy, whether it's light, because I know who I am. So I'm going to breathe it in, I'm going to consciously transform it, and then as I transform it, when I send and refract that energy back out, it's going to go back out as the highest frequencies of love and the highest frequencies of light, as blessings for everybody. So this is why, particularly, for if anyone's watching this, I dare say they're empaths. That's why they're watching. You're sensitive if you're watching a podcast like this. So, you're feeling the energies of the planet. And it's important that that sensitive souls are born on the planet and are on the planet at the moment, because that's how the planet's going to change. Like when you're an empath and when you're sensitive, you feel it. When someone else or something else gets hurt, you feel it as though it's
Right.
you. So you're way less likely to create pain for someone or something else because you feel it. So there's a reason that there's a massive wave of highly sensitive beings and empaths on the planet, but we need to learn how to manage that and turn that sensitivity into our superpower. And the understanding, I actually have a month-long training in that, resilience training for empaths and turning your sensitivity into a superpower. It's called Be the Crystal. I'm actually going to give that to your listeners.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, as a gift. So remind me at the end and we'll give you a code, and you can send us a DM on Instagram and you'll get access. It's normally 333 US, but you can have that for free. Why? Because everybody that I know that does this is like, oh my God, this has changed my life. And
Oh, wow.
that's the whole point. It's to get as many people activated and remembering, and give tools that are a blend of ancient wisdom and this, what we're working with now, ancient future wisdom, I kind of call it, and remember the truth of who you really are, so that when you're bouncing around out there in life, you start to become more conscious of it. Because the more conscious we can become, the more present we can become with how the energies are arriving to us and what we're doing with them, the much easier it becomes. Very hard for anything to take us out when we're present, right?
Hmm.
But we have to really watch it, because there's so much going on that's pulling our attention and distracting us in so many ways. So these tools are really everything from how to work with energy, from how to, there's physical practices that you can do to clear your field and to bring yourself back to center. There's also a whole section on understanding who we really are and why we came,
Hmm.
and being able to see and understand that the traumas and the things that we go through in our life, that when we make this switch from the victim to the creator, we see that we wrote those things for ourselves. As weird as it
Right.
might be, you might think, why the hell would I write that for myself? It was like, well, because your soul and its infinite wisdom, your higher self, knew that that's what you needed. That's
Right.
what you needed, that you chose it. But then for me, I really see that there's three parts to us, you know. We have our physical being, which is this human avatar. You know, I
Hmm.
love this. I was reflecting on it. I'm like, wow, we're actually the Avatar movie. That's us. Like
Right.
the avatars aren't blue. The avatar is the human, and we're the blue one stepping into the human.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yes, I love that movie.
Isn't it great? And
Yes.
when you start to realize that and you realize the game, then we have the soul, and the soul is the part of us that's like the record keeper. So the soul is the thing that's been through all of the lifetimes. It knows what it's done, it knows what it wants to do. It has an idea of what it thinks it needs to heal or reconcile to awaken to move to the next, you know, to its next stage of evolution. And then there's the high self, which is our essence, which is already healed. It's already whole. There is absolutely nothing for us really to do. And the essence kind of sits back, kind of like the medicines do, that it sits back and watches us going through all of our things like a kind grandparent going, oh, look at the little one go. You know,
Right.
she thinks she needs to do this, and she thinks, oh, one day she'll realize that there's nothing to forgive, there's nothing to heal, that she's already everything, and she'll just rest. You know, so that's where we're all headed to, and it's the integration of those three things that I think is the awakened self. You know, in this, it's realizing that without having to die to do it.
Exactly. But do you feel like in your mind, like I feel it's like even time has sped up to me. Like even,
Oh,
the time is like, what? I mean, how did I get here? Like it's already this time, June, and I feel like every year we just speed up. And why is that? Is it in like as a shaman when you are working in the nature and you with that living in where you do your ceremonies and do all your every all your magic? Do you feel like the time is slower and you're like because you're more in the moment?
this is such, I could not agree with you more. And it's such an interesting contemplation to play with the notion of time and space. I don't know where I was talking with somebody about this recently about when clock time came into being. And I might be wrong, so please don't like correct me if I am wrong, but apparently it only came into being when they started circumnavigating the world, because they needed before that. I mean, the indigenous people up until even recently, and some of them still, they don't have clock time, right? They're guided by the rise of the sun and the setting of the sun. They're guided by, as the ancient Andeans were, the stars. They knew that when certain constellations were in certain parts of the sky, that it was time to plant this, and then it was time to plant that. So there wasn't this, oh, it's now. There was this life of humility where they were guided by nature instead of trying to force nature into doing. I mean, what do we do now? We have bloody chemtrails that are trying to change the weather patterns, you know, so that they can plant crops. And it's crazy. Just on that track for a minute here, what's so beautiful here in the Andes is that for the month of August, the 1st of August is Pachamama Day, and for the whole month of August, they stop all farming and they let everything rest. They let the earth rest and they crop rotate. You know, this is all because they still traditionally are not just being led by this, but rather in their humility are being led by nature and letting nature give the directive. Um, and in ceremony, I've had some very, very funny and like what just happened experiences where I remember being in ceremony and I held up the medicine cup to my assistant and I said, "Do you see the mountain and the river in this cup?" And she's like, "Yeah." And we both went into the cup. And we had this simultaneous journey where we
Huh.
went through, it was phenomenal. We were going through all these different timelines of history. We were seeing ancient people, we were seeing pyramids, we were going into the Shipibo in the jungle, and it felt like we had been on an 8-hour expedition. And then when we both went like this and came back out of this cup and we looked at each other and we're like, wow, that was amazing. I said, how long was that? And I said, that must have been hours. She looks at her watch and she goes, it was 16 minutes.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. So does that mean that you've done that before? Like you're remembering that time? That's your soul is like showing you that again?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's hard for us to wrap, it's even hard for me to wrap my head around this notion of parallel time.
Right.
For me, when I go into these ancient sites like I've just been in, the purpose of these ancient sites is very clear to me. They are coded. They are coded with remembering, with wisdom and knowledge, with a frequency for us to remember now. They were coded by the masters back in time that knew that we would get to now and we would need it. So they were very much thinking in the future from that point. But how's this for a notion? What if it was me or you or whoever's visiting that site that coded it?
Mm,
And what if the future self in
right.
one parallel timeline told the self back here, hey, this is coming, you need to do this, so that the present self is able to receive whatever needs to be received and remember. So is that happening past, present, future, or is that happening here and now all at once?
Exactly.
In
Oh
a
my
parallel
gosh.
timeline. And
Right.
it's so beautiful, because in the Temple of Tiwanaku in Bolivia, the ancient masters coded this for us. There is these monoliths that have these very intricate and profound carvings again that they can't figure out how they did because it looks like the rock has been melted. And it shows as above, so below. Now, what that means is that you are here, but there is another you
Mm,
existing in another dimension. So the invitation from the masters when you stand in front of these stones is to connect to that part of you that is existing in the higher dimension and receive the information or the wisdom or the remembering that you need for right now. Because that's the thing, like we're batting around here on the earth in the mind, thinking again, it goes back to that thing I was saying before of thinking we're alone. But when we're going around and it's like just being led by this all the
hmm
time and thinking this is it. But when you stop and you stand in front of this and you go, wow, these masters knew this, and you tune in and you just take a moment to, in that meditative state, tap into the other you in another dimension. Every single person gets a message.
hmm
And it's always a message of love. It's always a message of encouragement. You know, we are being so guided. It's crazy. It's just that we've just been conditioned. That's all. The mind has just been let to run amok for the last 5,000 years. And I truly think that the mind's prayer is to be integrated with the heart.
hmm
It's not to say that one over the other, but when we can tap into this intuitive wisdom and remembering, then the mind becomes a really powerful tool because you get the message and then the mind makes it happen.
Right.
So
In
it's
your
cool.
in your retreats lately, like you just had your, what is it? How that's a long retreat, over 2 weeks,
It was 20 days.
20
We,
days.
yeah, because the original one was just 15, but for me, I've been doing this a long time. I've been bringing groups here since 2013 every year, apart from the pandemic year, at least twice. And people always ask me in advance, what's the itinerary? And I'm like, I don't know. I can tell you what the
Oh,
itinerary was from last year, but it happens for me that about a month before they start screaming, I start hearing them, you have to come here, you have to go. So what happened with this one is we had the original 15-day Golganan retreat here in the Sacred Valley in the Andes to Upper Gati and Machu Picchu and many other sacred sites. And then I started hearing the masters from Mu, which is the Lemurian masters from the lake Titicaca, all the legends there about Atlantis and Lemuria. And they're like, so a week before our journey began, I was like, okay, we're going to move. And it was crazy because I'm like my human self was like, no, it's 20 days. But, it's kind of like when the call's there, I have to listen.
Right.
So that's what we did. We continued.
Huh.
And we went up into into these ancient temples of the Lemurian masters. It was very, very powerful.
Wow. And Atlantis is in the underneath the lake? Where, explain that.
Yeah, so I mean, everybody has their own legend or myth or idea of Atlantis. For the Aymara people, which are the indigenous people of Bolivia, there is a belief that the city of Atlantis, the lost city of Atlantis, is underneath a place called Valle de los Animas, the Valley of the Souls. It's a phenomenal, it's like walking into a cathedral of masters. I've never seen a landscape like it. It's very, very powerful, very, very mystical. There's another place there called the Valley of the Moon, which they legend that the solar disk, there's a very famous solar disk that was legend to be given to the Inca by the Lemurian masters, and it resided in a place called the Coricancha, which is the Temple of the Sun here in Cusco for many, many years until the conquistadors came, and then they took it and they hid it. And the legend says that it is somewhere beneath the Valley of the Moon. Then we were in Tiwanaku, which is a phenomenal, I mean, I actually had one woman on our group who has been to Egypt a lot, and she's like, why are people going to Egypt? They should be coming here. I
Huh.
mean, I think all of the sacred
Right.
sites, and they're going to call to you as it's needed. You're going to be
Right.
called to where you're going to receive the activation. But Tiwanaku is so old. Like all of these sites, even with Egypt now, they're proving that they're way older than the history books originally said. It means they've got to rewrite everything, so it's a pain in the ass for them, isn't it? But
Right.
that's why that's why they're
Right.
like, we don't want to know, we don't want to know. But Tiwanaku is used to be, it's now about 4 kilometers inland from Lake Titicaca, but it used to be on the shore. Now, if you can imagine that Lake Titicaca is the highest navigable lake in the world, it's 4.5 kilometers above sea level. It used to be the ocean.
Oh, wow.
And there's a
Huh.
seahorse. It's a very famous, the Lake Titicaca seahorse, that isn't a seahorse, exactly as you would find in the ocean, that's adapted over the millennia to be able
Wow.
to live in fresh water. So at some point, this was ocean. And at some point, Tiwanaku was on the shore. And they say that Tiwanaku was the meeting, the convergence, the meeting point of the Atlanteans and the Lemurians. Not to say that that's, I mean, where Atlantis and Lemuria was, but it was definitely a convergence point. And when you look, I tell you what, Ashley, one of the most amazing things that you'll see is here, 10,000 years old, you see carvings. There's a temple called the Temple of the Ancestors, and it's a subterranean temple that you walk down into. In the center is the Huiracocha, which is the god of the sun, and Pachamama. And then around the edges are about 200 faces carved that stick out, heads that stick out
Wow.
from the walls. And there is every race that you could imagine. There's African,
Wow.
Chinese, Caucasian, alien, there's everything there. And then you see from maybe 2,000 years, 3,000 years, you see really ornate China from China, Japanese, like
Huh.
before they say that cultures ever intermingled or were circumnavigating, you can't deny it. It doesn't, it's nothing like the local ceramics and the pottery. I mean, the faces are like with the little, and an Asian almond shaped eyes, and or African shaped faces or Caucasian shaped faces
Wow. Or alien?
alongside alongside what we call the Wakis, the aliens.
Huh. The Wakies?
Wakis, yeah, and they have a very, very strong legend in well, it's not even a legend; it's their creation story. in Lake Titicaca that the original people were called the Chulpas. They were before the humans.
Hmm.
And they kind of, even the women now, the Cholitas and the Mamitas, they dress in layers and layers and layers of these big skirts and puffy blouses to kind of make them look that from the shoulders, they just come out like in the shape of what is called a chulpa. A chulpa is actually a tomb, but it's like a round, it's a
Oh.
very sacred shape. And they say that the original beings were called the chulpas. And then there was a race of beings from the stars that were reptilian. Now, this is really funny to me because this is all the new age, you know, theories that we hear.
Right.
But this is thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years old, 20, 30, 40,000 years old, these legends that come through.
Wow.
And they even call the Anunnaki, which we hear, I don't know if you've heard of this
Mm-hmm.
word, but that, yeah.
Yes.
And I was talking to Juan, who knows nothing about all the new age stuff, nothing. And I was like, what about the Anunnaki one? And he said, oh, yes, in Aymara, it means the dog people.
Oh,
He said,
huh.
we call them, he said, but they weren't really dog people, they were serpents, kind of like dragons.
Hmm.
He said, and they were, he said, some of them were good and some of them weren't so good. He said, and they came to Earth because they discovered that we had a lot of natural resources here. There was gold, there was silver, there was resources that they could use on their own planet, and they wanted to come and mine them.
Hmm.
He said, and what happened was is they bred with the chulpas. So they started to, some of them, he said, were really kind of nasty and evil, and others weren't. He said, but what happened was, is the chulpas, some of them didn't like the interbreeding, and they started to become very violent and very angry, and they started to kill the reptilian beings. And so then there was an intervention, and the intervention was from the angelic realms. And the angels that came down were called the Viracocha. So the
Hmm.
Viracocha is what they name the creator god here in the Andes and also up in Bolivia. Huayra is actually the fat, it's the vitality, it's the masculine aspect that gives vitality, and Cocha is the water. So that's where the name comes from.
Hmm.
But he tells me that these angels came down because these are the creator gods, because this was not the plan for Earth. You know, there was this disharmony happening. And so the angels came down and they, first of all, said to the reptilian beings, you can stay, but you have a service here. And your service is to protect. This is a very similar legend to the Andean myths and legends as well. Your service is to protect the new species of being that's going to emerge now. You have to be their guardians and their gatekeepers. And so they petrified them into stone, and you could see some of their faces in the stone, and they became the
Wow.
apus. They became the mountains, right?
Huh.
So they became the guardians of Pachamama and the guardians of the new race. And the new race were the angelic beings, then interbred with the hybrid of the reptilian and the chulpa. So then you ended up with the human, and the
Hmm.
human is a blend of the angelic, of the reptilian, and of the original chulpa. So we
Wow.
have all of those aspects within us, but our true nature is this. Our true nature is this angelic being. So,
Hmm.
in their creation stories, and then of course when the conquistadors came, and it was all about the Catholic religion, they saw all of the traditional songs and dances portraying these apus as dragons and as snakes, like as these reptilian beings. But the Catholic Church demonized them and said they're devils.
Hmm.
And so then they changed all of the costumes and so now you see them, and even on the paintings and everything, as these devils,
Huh.
but they're not devils at all. These are our ancestors actually,
Wow.
and now
Oh,
our guardians. Yeah,
I'm so glad I asked you that question. That was amazing.
it's
We're at the
incredible.
end, but I want to ask you, you've seen giants and dragons?
I have. as weird as that sounds, I have seen them with my own eyes. I've visited the portal of Aramamuru, which hands down, it's on the Peruvian side of Lake Titicaca, hands down, one of the most powerful portals I've ever been to in my life. A lot of people go there because there's also, apparently, I haven't seen it because I haven't stayed there at night, but there's a lot of paranormal activity. They see a lot of UFOs and lights in the sky, and all of this sort of stuff happens there. But the legend of Adamamuru is this Incan priest took the sun disk, and there was a portal that was carved into the edge of the lake by the ancient masters, and he used the sun disk to open. There's like a keyhole. There really is a keyhole in the portal, and
Huh.
he went through. And there's numerous stories of people visiting this portal, and when they're ready, they go through. And I went through.
Oh my
Not,
gosh.
I know it took me so by surprise. One minute I'm there, it was a preparation of about 6 or 7 hours to even approach, to feel like I was ready to approach this portal. And then when I put my hands down and put my third eye, immediately I saw a golden disc, but it was like fluid, like alchemical gold. There was two beings standing on either side. One was rotating up, one was rotating, it's like spinning beings.
Hmm.
And the next minute I couldn't feel my body, and I've gone through, and I'm like, I'm the rock and the rock is me, and I'm the light and the light is me. And I just kept going, going, going. And they were calling me through, and it was so beautiful. It was like you hear of the tunnel of light. It was kind of like that. And then there was a moment where I realized, well, hang on a second, I'm going too far. I'm not going to be able to get back out. Like my mind, my humanness kicked in. And it was Inti Raimi, which is the Andean New Year. And so there was a lot of festivities happening behind me. And I just focused on the sound of the children playing, and I literally had to, I was like magnetized. I don't know what it looked like from the outside, but I was like, like pushing to
Huh.
get out of this thing. And the grief that overcame me was unbelievable. That moment changed my life. For 3 days, felt completely dissolved. I could barely function. I dissolved into the oneness, which
Hmm.
is awesome, but it's actually very hard to be in that state when you're in a physical body, because it's,
Oh, I bet.
you know what I mean? You can't really function, but it served a purpose, because it was at that point that I really got it, that I had to unravel myself out of my business, which I ended up giving away, actually, to fully be on my path. I'm not telling everybody to do that, but that was what I needed to do. And that was the beginning of that process, because I realized that there was so much more. And
Ah.
and one of the biggest realizations I had in that moment, and I share this with a lot of people because I see this when people have these big expanded experiences of awakening and remembering in these places, they don't want to come back, is that I decided to be here.
Mm.
You know, I decided to incarnate in this physical body, in this time space reality, because I'm here to be a part of the change.
Right.
And so even though there's a big part of us that's like, I just want to go home, people are like, why? Why do I want to be down there? It's like, it's awesome here. It's beautiful. It's all here for us. This planet is amazing. And you decided to be here.
Right. I love that.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
I could talk to you all day, and I've taken up almost of you. Oh, I just love listening to you. I mean, even if I ask you a question, I don't know, it's going to go down like, what? What if I didn't ask that question? That was amazing.
Oh,
Oh, I'm so grateful. And you've opened up my eyes and my heart and my present moment, my nature, my mountains, my crystals. Yeah, you've really it's just, just being able to, having a podcast and being able to really like study someone to be prepared and then to be able to have this conversation for over an hour. There's nothing like it. That's what it fulfills my soul, and to be with you and to see your beautiful face after I've been like, following your journey. And oh, there's really nothing like it for me. Like it's definitely why I'm here, what I'm here to be.
so beautiful, Ashley. Thank you so much. You're a shining example of that which we were talking about before. And I know for you, for sure, you've been on that journey to really find out what that true purpose is. And now to be living that and walking that out in the world is such a gift. for all of us. So thank you so much for
Oh,
following your heart and being here and allowing these spaces, for everybody to really step into the remembering of who they really are. Thank
oh,
you.
I love it. And we'll find you with your website. We'll find you to sign up for your classes and your retreats and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. As I said, I'd love to gift the Be the Crystal to your listeners. So they can find me on Instagram. I guess you'll put that in your show notes. It's at Anchoring the Light. Very easy. The website's the same, at Anchoring the Light. And if you send us a DM with the word resilience, then we will give you the link for
Perfect.
Be the Crystal to enjoy.
Perfect. And anchoring the light, and now I understand, is that you had to give someone 3 words of what you do. And I
Yeah.
love that. So if I just want everyone to understand like why anchoring the light, because that is what you felt that day. If you could put 3 words together, that's what
Yeah,
you would say.
it was about 10 years ago, I think. I was facilitating a huge cacao ceremony for about 800 people, but it was the big opening, and I had elders from all over the world coming. I'm like, oh my God, these Indigenous elders, and here the blonde lady, what am I going to do? It was beautiful, so powerful. But the organizers of the festival said to me, we need in 3 words what you do, because we're going to put a photo up on the screen and it can just be 3 words. And I'm like, 3 words? You heard how many words I use? Like 3 words. And so I'm like, and then it just came. I was like, it's anchoring the light. Everything that I do, it doesn't matter. That's the true purpose. It doesn't matter what form it takes, what role I play, whether I'm sharing ceremony or teaching people how to facilitate, or it doesn't matter what it is. It's the same thing. It's anchoring the light is the remembering that we simple, our true purpose, that we are seeds of love, and that our mission, our purpose is simply to be the best that we can be while we're here on the earth, in service to unconditional love, in service to the light, so that at the end of our lives, when we're planted as the seeds that we are back into the earth, then thousands more like us can come.
Mm,
And that's
I
our
love that.
legacy. That's our gift. Yeah.
Ah, on that note, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening, everyone.